Law Parish Church, where grace happens.
A warm welcome to Seeds for Sunday from wherever in the world you're joining us today. So we've stepped into the story of Exodus, into the retelling of how the children of Abraham find themselves helplessly enslaved at the mercy of a powerful empire ruled over by a tyrant of a king. And yet, as we'll see from our reading today, even in their helplessness, they find a way to subvert Pharaoh's authority. Two women dare to take on the might of Pharaoh, and what happens? Well, that's what we're going to explore together today. Let's step into the story of Exodus, and as it illumines our life, allow it to become a story for us today.
When God's perfect plans are hard to see, and struggles surface everywhere, we lay our lives before His sovereignty and pray His peace would find us there. Jesus, Lord of peace, is with us now and will forever be a shepherd king who leads us into perfect stillness. When sadness hits our homes and all feels lost, when the night is full of fear, the God of comfort shows His love to us and holds us tightly through the tears. Jesus, Lord of peace, is with us now and will forever be our shepherd king who leads us into perfect stillness.
At the end of the week, the slave drivers hand in their balance sheets. The Egyptian civil servants count up the numbers, and the final figure reveals how Pharaoh's flagship policy of heartless slavery to control the population has completely failed. Under Pharaoh's cruelty, the Hebrews aren't dwindling away. The numbers are rising. The people born from a promise are still growing. The king's original plan to decrease the slave population in labour camps has gone astray. How does Pharaoh respond? Like all dictators, he lacks the imagination to do anything more than turn the screws of cruelty even tighter. Pharaoh has a new plan. He sends for 2 midwives who deliver the Hebrew babies, and he orders them to act as secret state murderers. You know what to do, Pharaoh tells them. But who are these 2 midwives? I'll tell you exactly who they are, because unlike Pharaoh, the story remembers their names. Shiphrah and Puah. We remember their names because we're told they were in awe of God more than they feared Pharaoh. Their whole lives had been in partnership with God, helping to bring life to birth. For Shiphrah and Puah, bringing life to birth was the way you partner God. Bringing life to birth was how you knew God. Because you trusted God was always on the side of life. So they weren't going to stop that for anyone, not even Pharaoh. On the side of life, I think that's a way of looking at Jesus. When he stops the stone throwers honour killing a young woman, and after they are gone, refuses to condemn her himself, is he not on the side of life? When Jesus stretches out his hand and holds an untouchable, and the man's scabbed hand becomes clean enough for him to go back somewhere and belong to someone again, is that not bringing life to birth? When the Samaritan woman turns up at a well, trying to keep out of everyone's way, and Jesus becomes a beggar for her and asks a drink of water, and tells her own story back to her in a way that she can hear not as a rebuke, but setting her free, until she's not afraid anymore to face those she was avoiding. Is that not bringing new life to birth in someone? When Jesus was led naked and beaten, his tired humanity nailed like a piece of butcher meat on 2 blocks of wood, it was there on a cross, in his death and dying, that Jesus partnered God to bring new life out of the worst that can happen. By taking all human sin into his own body on a cross, Jesus forever destroys sin's power to keep us apart from God. The cross is where Jesus midwives salvation into the world. On the cross, God partners Jesus, revealing how he shows up in unpromising places, the kind of places we find ourselves when we struggle to put someone's sock on for them, and the time it takes to feed someone unable to feed themselves, and the aftermath of a loss, and the truth about ourselves we'd rather not hear, and the habit that's become a prison yard in a COVID world. It's in unpromising places like these that God comes looking for us. to midwife our acquired guilt into forgiveness, to midwife our hurt into healing, to midwife our grief into putting together broken pieces into a new shape, to midwife our anguish into hopeful beginning, to midwife death into timeless life. The Gospels tell us it's in a tomb that God makes a womb of life and brings forth resurrection. The places we consider dead and never imagined could carry life still find us. Like when age chips away at someone's movement, or perhaps tears the mind's net until the holes are too big to catch the little fish of memory anymore. And then we make them smile, or see in their gaze, or even their humiliation, something that puts us in touch with our own fragility. It's here, in these kind of places, the God of the cross comes to find us. Helps us to see in the weakness of others our own imperfections, and to hold both with greater compassion. Sometimes those we are with and struggle to care for are Shifra and Pua, partnering God's life into us, bringing to birth something new in our own heart. They midwife tenderness into our humanity. This is the foolishness of God. St. Paul tells us is wiser than human wisdom. For God really shows up through Jesus' human weakness, abandonment, suffering and death. Sometimes it's in such harsh, lifeless places we find something life-giving showing up and surprising us. I wonder, how will God bring us to be Shifra for the hurting amongst those we live with at this time, those in our community? Where will God ask us to be Pua, partnering Jesus in bringing life to birth? How do we find ourselves on the side of life? Well, here in our village in these past months, we've kept in touch with one another. We've worked with others in our community, going for prescriptions for those shielding. And the food bank that worked out of the church here, alongside those from the community trust, and the many folks who would show up Friday by Friday bringing parcels of food. The local primary school teachers who over the summer made sure that vulnerable families were not forgotten. Shifra and Pua, midwives of life at work in our village over these last months. In the face of something overwhelmingly powerful, destructive of our physical, psychological and social life, there have been people who have midwifed goodness to birth, care and generosity to be shared on the side of life. Today, where you struggle, where you have no answer for hard question, where you've laid hope in a covent-shaped tomb, may you find the love of God like Shifra and Pua, turning your dead place into a womb of risen life.